It's not like a new thing or a surprise that, oh, a gay guy's painting. Like, wow, okay. Alert the news.
Hello, my LGBTQTs, and welcome back to another episode of A Jaded Gay. I'm Rob Lovelace, and today I am a non-jaded gay because I recently bought a bicycle and sold my car. I was a little hesitant to do this at first, but I've been living in the city for almost a year, and I realized that I really don't use my car that much. Like, I would drive to the gym in the morning and get groceries, but that's pretty much it. And just right now, looking at going back to grad school, keeping my finances in track, I realized that it was just kind of a waste of money to have my car sitting around outside when I really only used it to drive 10 minutes every day. So I sold it and I bought this car at the end of 2019, so almost 5 years ago. And it's definitely, seen some things. Living in Philly here, it's gotten scraped and bumps, just being parked on the street, people sideswiping it. But I was pleasantly surprised because despite that, CarMax bought my car for just about $5,000 less than I bought it for 5 years ago. So I consider that a win. So I was able to pay off some bills, throw some money in investing and savings, and pay my tuition bill. Hey. And so far, I've liked having a bicycle. I've been, riding my bike to the gym every morning. It's about a mile each way. I've had to run a few errands here and there where I've gotten on my bike instead of walking. So far, so good. And I'm hoping that all that pedaling really helps with these legs. Anyway, from pedaling to painting, I am very excited to have a special guest on today to talk about queer art. Now, in past episodes, we've had authors on, we've talked about pop culture creativity. So I'm very excited for today's guest to talk to us a little bit about how he's inspired with creativity, both personally and politically, how it influences his art, and the importance of supporting queer art. So we'll dive into that in a minute. But first, let's pull our tarot card. So the card for this episode is the King of Swords. Swords, as you remember, is tied to the element of air, which is all about communication, both verbal and written. It's masculine energy, which is action-oriented, and the king is also a masculine card. And I don't mean that in a gendered or patriarchal way. I'm talking about his position of being a leader and an authority. I mean, he's literally the king of his castle. So with a masculine energy and a masculine figure, this card is very action-oriented. Also, the King of Swords is the final card in the suit, so it's telling us that we're at the end of a cycle or journey. It's also the 14th card in that suit, so with double digits, we add them together and get 5, which is representative of challenges and hardships, and sometimes even conflict. So when we draw this card, it's reinforcing the qualities of a king within us, and those include leadership, intelligence, and logic. So using those attributes, we need to take decisive action as we come to the end of this cycle. Where are we going from here? What's the next logical step for us to take? We need to trust our inner voice and intuition to guide us forward. And also tying into the conflict nature of the number 5, when we're viewed as a leader or have succeeded at something, others may critique us or try to challenge us, which can result in conflict. So we need to remember to use our logic and intelligence in how we respond and engage with others in these instances. And the way we communicate, especially in difficult situations, speaks volumes about our character. So with that in mind, I am very excited to welcome our next guest. He makes queer art for theme parks. Please welcome Jacoby Nordberg. Hi, Jacoby. How are you today?
Hey there, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for coming on today to talk to us about all things queer art.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, kicking it off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you identify, your career, hobbies, pronouns, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so my name's Jacoby Nordberg. I go by he, him. I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, but then I graduated and moved over to Orlando, Florida, where I'm currently residing and making fabrication and restoring things and working as an artist full time.
And today, are you a jaded or non-jaded gay, and why?
I've been thinking about this all day. I feel like I could be very easily jaded. Maybe I am starting out as jaded because of the career and the grind and all, but I want to be not jaded. But I would be fake to say that I'm not.
I think we all have a little jadedness in us, but it's a journey to move beyond the jaded. So I think that's a good answer. Well, getting right into it then, can you tell us about your art and your career as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like my story isn't as like exciting as other people's because it's very normal where like I was always attracted to art. I was very like into it as a kid, very supported by my parents. Like my dad built an easel for me. My mom gave me like the cheapest, saddest like pack of like supplies. And it just kind of took off from there. But it was a lot of like duplication work, like taking like my favorite book covers and repainting them and just like copying a lot. And so my move into like going into school, it was a lot more like they wanted conceptual work, they wanted landscapes, and I was like, I just like kind of copying, which it sounds like a cheap out, a cop out to be like, I just want to copy shit. Um, and extend, I guess. But now that's what I do in Orlando. It took moving across the country, but that is now what I do, but for the theme parks. So it's not more like creating like original shit. It's more like continuing and restoring things that already exist, but doing it in the mindset of the creators that originally made it. So it's kind of built for me in that way.
And you talked about how your family supported you with your dad building an easel, your mom buying some art packs for you. But from a young age, were there any artists or creators out there who really influenced you and really kind of piqued your interest in pursuing art as a career?
Yeah, I mean, I love, of course, like it was a lot of film. I feel like film really got me going with like David Lynch and Alfred Hitchcock. Lots of like old pretentious. I was such a really like pretentious teenager, like watching like Alfred Hitchcock. Everyone's talking about like Quentin Tarantino, and I'm like, no, but like Rear Window though. Like I was the most like annoying bitch out there, like jaded from the get go. Um, but a lot of like or Dario Argenti, like very like specific Italian British film. And then moving into like where my career is now, it was more like, you know, Joe Rody, Glassy Imagineers, Extensio, like the whole thing of like being like a theme park Disney adult, like so cringy, but I really leaned into it and now I've kind of gotten where I am now. But it took a lot of being very like, I guess, liking what I like as a kid and just kind of rolling with it, even though, you know, everyone else is playing, like foosball and beer pong. And I'm like, but the theme parks, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Definitely. And you talked about how your interest in art brought you to Orlando and your career there, building some sets. Can you tell us a little bit more about the work you do as an artist?
Yeah. So I work at nights. So I moved to a state that's sunny and hot, and I only see the moon. Like it's the most ironic bullshit. But now like I when there's issues in the park at night, I am the one that's sent out to go fix them and to go patch things up and feed King Kong and feed the dinos and shit. That's my job now.
Very cool. So, how has your journey as a queer artist shaped your creative process and the themes you explore in your work?
I feel like as queer people we fall into like being very obsessed with super niche shit or like pop culture. Like that's part of our community is like really like finding icons that we relate to that will probably never know us, like Gaga, Madonna, and stuff. But like we not I only idolize, but really are inspired and driven by them. And so being queer and like finding the Venn diagram of like queer people and theme park people, it really was such a driving force, especially like online on Reddit posts and like Defunct Land and stuff like all the YouTube channels that are so um niche and specific and like, oh, these are my people. These people like fucking get it. So it wasn't only just the queer community, it was also like the queer theme park community. And then like mixing that with artists and going to school with gay people that are like very conceptual, very original, making like abstract pieces about whatever trauma they have. Um, it was such an interesting mix for sure to grow up in. And yeah, being a queer artist is very interesting in the theme parks, especially because most of the people that are making the theme parks in such a conservative state are queer. Like a lot of creative, a lot of Imagineering, they're all gay. They're all gay. But then the people that come in the daytime to visit it vary against the gays, which is so interesting to me.
That is interesting. And especially because in past episodes, we've talked about finding community and beyond just the sense of going to bars or being in the party scene. So there's obviously different subsects of community through volunteering, your geographical community, all of that. So it sounds like there is a kind of a sub community of artists out there, specifically in this case, theme park artists in your vicinity.
Oh yeah, and then it's cool to see like people that work in the theme parks at night or whatever. They're also doing shit like for theaters, for like other communities. So it's cool to see how it's not just like the theme park industry, but it bleeds out into all of Orlando. And so I'm working with people that are like working at one company and I'm working at a different company and they're also working in theaters and like small gigs and bars. And I'm like, it's just such a creative place that you wouldn't like the swamps. You would never think the swamps would be so full of like queer creatives, but it's like, I mean, moving from Seattle, it's like super, it's more inspiring to me to be here than in Seattle, which is ironic because you would think it'd be the opposite.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think there's a difference in the art scenes between Seattle and Orlando?
Yeah, and there's not like one that's better. I mean, I'm much more like the gimmick scene. Like if I were to pick a horror movie, it'd be like something super campy and silly versus like very serious and dark. Like a Suspiria 70 the 70 version versus like the new one with the Tilda Swinton. Like I would much rather have like the bright colors and the campy blood and the whole thing. And that's what I would think Seattle versus Orlando is like, where it's Seattle's more about progressive and it's about like, we're fighting for a cause and we're doing a piece about this issue. And then there's like organic materials being used. And it's very like big mind concept, where here it's like, this thing is based on a fairy tale and then that's it. Like it's very gimmicky, which I don't mind. I really like it. Like there's drone shows and fireworks and projection mapping, and it's all based on like a fairy tale. Like I like that. It's very escapism, but I guess that's kind of what I needed after 2020.
Were there any particular moments or experiences that significantly influenced your decision to pursue a career in art?
I mean, I don't know. I think it was always, I think for some people it is like there is a moment, but for me it was just always there. I think I got more into theater as a teenager because I wanted more attention because I was a jaded gay, as we would say. But I don't I don't think there was any one moment. I think it was just a lot of support. I mean, when I came out and everything, there was lots of support too. So I guess I'm very privileged and blessed in that way. Um, but there's not like one moment where I was like, this is the shit. I think I went to the theme parks a lot as a kid. So I was like, every time I would go every year, I'd be like, continuing the cycle, like keeping the inspiration there. So I would say, yeah, it was just that.
Who are some of your biggest queer artistic influences and how have they impacted your work?
Right now, it's a lot of like TikTok artists and like smaller people. I mean, when you talk about like big people too, but I mean, there's so many smaller artists now. I just know them by their usernames and stuff. But there's so many like just random people in school that are making TikToks, and I'm like, these people are fucking doing things that I would never think possible with like the editing, and it's like traditional painting, but then they're also editing on top to make it like stop motion and stuff. And I just really appreciate the new medium of like social media that layers it and adds to it in a way that we really didn't have before.
Definitely. And I think that's another layer of community beyond just our geographical locations. We're able to connect online. And sometimes it's terrible because there could be a lot of trolls online. But something that's really amazed me is seeing TikTok. There are so many sub communities in there. I know there's tarot talk, book talk, all these different talks. So can you tell us more about what the art TikTok community is like?
I mean, art TikTok and like art social media is very interesting. I feel like it's definitely part of like the business now. Like to be a successful artist that's pursuing like traditional fine art, painting, sculpture, especially as a queer person, you have to have that like component of a platform or like merch or like a stream or a certain day that you're posting. I know certain artists in my community in my circle are very much against social media. They're like, I could never do that. I'm not like a influencer. And I'm like, but that's like our gallery now. Like to make art and to put it in a gallery is one thing, but how are you going to get people to go to your gallery? You have to put it on social media. You have to advertise it. And I feel like it's the same kind of thing with like projection. Like, okay, we're going to paint a big mural and we're going to use a projector to get that image on there to trace it. And people be like, that's cheating. You can't use a projector. Mama, Michelangelo's using like an old fashioned projector to do the Sistine Chapel. Like, this is a tool we have. I don't know why people are so. I think they see like TikTok dances, Miss Doja Cat, Miss Apple, like the whole thing that they're like, oh, cringe. But like, we can also use this as like a almost like film, like a little. You can make like short movies for your work. I don't know. I think it's a whole other tool in our belt that has now become also an extra pressure. There's that double-edged sword where it's like, yay, we get to like the whole world can see it, but now it's a requirement. which is now a heavier weight, and I get so burnt out, mama. It's so tiring.
I bet. I mean, it's kind of self advocating where it's one thing to produce your own work and hope people discover it, but it's another that you really kind of have to market yourself out there, whether it's showing up at conventions or art sales or now social media. So it could be rewarding being your own boss, but also I'm sure it takes a lot out of you.
Oh yeah, I mean, look at people like Trixie Mattel, like huge artists in the community. She's taken a 3 month break because of how much she's had to do for herself to get where she is. And I mean, of course she has a team, but when she started, she probably it's like you have to be your own manager, your own editor, creative director. You have to like it's too much. That's and it's all for the sake of art. Like what are we doing?
Well, speaking of personal art and identity, how do you integrate your personal experiences into your art, especially as you talked about earlier, being a gay man living in a relatively conservative state?
Yeah, it's a lot of duality in my work. Like my personal work is about like the body, but also like not sexualizing. I think a lot of queer art turns very sexual very fast. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think there's more to the queer experience than that. And so I really like expressing portraiture and like landscape work um in a way that's more about like a duality of the human being or like the expansiveness cuz I don't know about you, but like being queer, being gay, it's not always just black and white. It's a spectrum of stuff. And so I think that's something that's very fun to tap into and play with, especially in like paintings. Because for me, sculpture is something that's kind of like it's there, it's in the physical space, but painting you can play with like dimensions and like contrasting and stuff.
Can you walk us through your creative process from the initial idea as it pops into your head to the finished piece?
I feel like for me, if I'm doing something where it needs to be an original piece, not like a duplication or a continuation of a project, it's something that is I'm always inspired by like music and film. So if I'm watching something or if I'm listening, I get like I had this conversation with someone recently where if I listen to music, I'm seeing images. And I was talking to someone, they're like, I don't see that. I'm like, what are we doing? Because they were saying they don't even see colors, no shapes. They when they listen to music, they see like the words. They're paying attention to the words. And I'm like, I can't imagine that. When I'm like listening to music, I'm seeing movies. And so usually there's like I'll make playlists of songs that are really visual to me. Like I'll have like entire vibes for songs and then I'll pull from those. And so when I'm feeling no creativity, like I'm like, I need to make some work. I need to do something. Um, I'll just listen to that playlist. I'll put that playlist on and just like there's like a sieve of information and like inspiration from that. Cause that's part of the issue is that like to make work, to be an artist, it's not about being inspired. Like that's like a privilege to be like so inspired. But it's really work. It's really just like doing shit when you don't want to. And so having a playlist like that is like the first step in my process. And then it goes on to like I would say like colors. Like I'm definitely someone that's very color focused. Like I said, like Italian giallo film. I really love a saturated palette. I don't like muted palettes. As you can see from my dining room, it's bright blue. Um, I like to lean into like almost like 70s vibes where we're just doing the most color, like late 70s. Um, almost to the point where it's gaudy, it's too saturated. Um, and then I go from there. I'm also someone that paid a lot of attention to David Lynch when I was growing up, so his mindset of like not explaining his work, like Guillermo del Toro was someone who's like, "Here's my film, and this is exactly what it means," and he would like go through the whole thing in interviews, and which is a great practice to have. But when I'm done with the piece, I'm almost like, and here it is, and I don't know what it means, but here it is, and that's a cool balance to have in my personal work that I don't have in my professional. Because like when I go to the theme parks, mama, there's a reason, there's a whole reason it's happening. It's very laid out, and but in my personal work, I can be as abstract as possible, and that's really fun.
And I'm curious about that playlist you talked about. Are there any top songs that come to mind that really kind of get that energy flowing?
Right now, it's a lot of the weekend. Like Dawn FM, that whole album is so I like conceptual work. So like um the weekend's first two albums, he's coming out with a third one, but those first two, After Hours and Dawn FM, are really good. So like Sacrifice is a good one. And then Ethel Cain has a conceptual album called Preacher's Daughter. and it's very dark. But like, I'd say House of Nebraska is a good one. And then if I had to pick one more, maybe I don't know. I feel like Journey, a lot of like Journey in like separate ways, but that's also like Stranger Things. So I guess I just think about Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things is credited with resurfacing a lot of songs. Like when Stranger Things came out, like I knew that song, but it just got back in my head and I listened to it all the time, became like my hot girl strut walk when I'm at the gym and stuff. And then like what's it called? Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. You know, not a lot of people had known that. And 40 some years later, it's moving up the charts. So I think Stranger Things definitely has some pop culture contributions there.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because like my car is named Babushka. Like I've loved Kate Bush since the start. And then when she got super popular, like the resurgence because of Stranger Things, talking about being a jaded gay, I was like, bitch, I've been knowing. Like as gay people, we're so in tune with like the shit. And then when it like gets popular, we're like, you call me crazy for talking about that. Like you said I was annoying for talking about that, and now that's all you listen to. Like with Brat. Oh my god, when Brat first happened and like the Boiler Room set, and I was like, guys, you're not ready for this album. It's gonna be so good. And they're like, Jacob, shut up. Like you're so annoying talking about Brat all the time. Miss Kamala Harris, Miss Kamala is all of America's talking about Brat now, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know. The gays are like, we're always ahead of that shit. And it makes me so jaded because I'm like, oh, now you want to get okay, now you want to get Kate Bush. Oh, gotcha. Okay.
I know. It's funny that you mentioned that because literally yesterday, my friend, I mean, admittedly, I'm not a huge Charlie XCX fan. Like, I like her and I know some of her music, but I don't follow her religiously. But I know about, you know, Brat, you know, the signature green color, all that stuff. And I've been plugged into it just from following a lot of gays on Instagram. I see it all. But my friend literally texted me last night, my straight friend. She's like, so what is Brat Summer? And I'm like, all right, well, let me try to explain this to you. And I think it was just because of that, like you said, with Kamala Harris, all of a sudden we're seeing her embrace the that green Brat color as well. So I think, like you said, it's gone to the mainstream. And even last year, I mean, I've loved Kylie Minogue for a while, and my friend got sick of her. She hates Kylie Minogue strictly because I was trying to push her onto her so much. But then Padam came out last year, and she's like, this is actually really catchy. I'm like, see, I told you.
No, the amount of times I've been like, I told you so is crazy. It's so frustrating.
Well, you spoke earlier about kind of the duality in your artwork as it represents queer art themes. That being said, how do you see the representation of LGBTQ plus artists in the art world today?
I mean, it's there. It's like it's everywhere. Is the thing is like in the industry in Orlando, it's there's always queers on the team. So like when like say like Renaissance came out and stuff, I'm like, oh, like the gays are with Beyonce. Like we are always there on the team. But I don't know. In my work, I don't know. That question's kind of hard because we're always there. Is the thing is like we're always on the team. We're always on the panel, and like the nods and the argue like the taking and stuff is very interesting to me. Where it's like I guess there's like gay baiting. You know, like when there's artists that are like doing queer shit and people are like, that's gay baiting. I'm like, or are we taking homage? Are we nodding? You know what I mean? It's a good conversation to have with that type of stuff.
What challenges have you faced as a queer artist and how have you overcome them?
I mean, I feel like most of the challenges I have are internal. I feel like it's a lot of self doubt or it's a lot of questioning or being hypercritical or staring at something for too long. And I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's all very internal. Of course there's a lot of competitiveness in the industry. I would say it's interesting to find myself being challenged by more unfortunate like queer people than straight people because the industry is so competitive that people who are even in your like circle in your community are the ones that are trying to get the same gig. So in that sense, that has made me jaded. But most of my work personal is internally challenged, I would say.
And going off of that, how important is it for you to create visibility for LGBTQ plus issues through your art?
Well, that's very important. I mean, even just being a representative, being a person in the room who is queer and to know that person was on the team or the project, that in itself is very important to have that voice or that working hand. You know, if it's a big project that we're working on in the parks, even just being that voice in the room or knowing that someone is doing that is something that maybe like the 7-year-old self of me would be like, oh, so I can do that, you know? Um, even though my job is sometimes, most times, an not a thankless job, you would say, because it's kind of unknown. We're just kind of in the background, we're in the crew. But in my like gallery fine artwork, I mean, yeah, like I said, in my personal work, it's very important to have that person in the room, that work in the gallery that is surrounded by other pieces. That's like, oh, this person's queer, but it's not, you know, it's not like a new thing or a surprise that oh, a gay guy's painting. Like, wow, okay, well, alert the news. But no, it's always great, especially if the representation is in the work or talking about a subject that's not maybe talked about a lot, like maybe at the intersection of being a person of color and queer, or someone with a disability and queer, or in a state that is not known for being very queer, or a country that's not known for being very queer focused or representative. Yeah, very, very cool.
And what do you hope people take away from your art?
That is a question I've been working on recently, because before in school it was like, I want to scare people. I want to give people a spook. And that's so not it. Like, that is so not my vibe. I think it changed after 2020, seeing so many people die and be struck with so much grief and loss and such a change in the world that we kind of all got PTSD together and kind of moved on in a way of trying to get closure. That my work is more not only about like escapism in my professional career, but more so about I would say it's about like inner work. It's about inner reflection and searching. I would say a lot of searching, and not just like in my work, but also like during. It's a lot of I want to go homage from like retro, what should I say? Like older artists, but apply it in a way that's searching forward. And that's nothing that's like new. That's done by so many people and probably should be done nonstop. But that is what I'm focusing on now, instead of like, I want to be that spooky bitch in the gallery. No, mama, that's not it. I don't want to do that's not cute. That's so cringy to me, because there's people that do it very well and very naturally and very in a way that's almost poetic and beautiful and like, but not I'm not doing haunted house. I'm not doing that anymore.
And are there any upcoming projects or exhibitions you're excited about?
Right now it's a lot of like furniture building. I'm doing a lot of like restoring thrifted pieces. There's I used to thrift a lot in Seattle, and there was a lot of great pieces, but now moving to Florida, all the furniture is very like it's very like tropical and wicker and Golden Girls and like very 80s. And um I'm loving restoring all these pieces. So before, when I would make personal work, it's like paintings, and now I'm doing like chairs, which is so butch of me. It's so like masculine and weird to be like wanting to get a truck just so I can buy an armoire, which is the gayest reason to get a truck, I would say. Like, I need to get a truck so I can buy a giant wardrobe and like have my Narnia fantasy. What am I doing? Where am I? But now it's like I'm gonna reupholster a chair, and I'm refinishing a mirror that cracked and broke. Thankfully not in my apartment, so there's no bad luck. But uh yeah, it's a lot of like sanding and cutting wood and repainting and glassing, which it reminds me of what I do at the parks, because I'm not to get off topic, but I we're using like things that are very traditionally masculine, like fiberglass, automotive paint. These are things that are used for like building boats and cars, and we're using them to make like the gayest, like queerest. We're making dinosaurs. We're making like wizarding witches. Like, we're doing very fantasy shit with very traditionally masculine tools, which is a part of that dichotomy, that part of the contrast and like duality of the art. I think it's very, very interesting to ponder. To use a material like a sander, but we're making like the gayest piece of furniture in the world. I love that.
That's awesome. And I think that's a great example too of that duality you talked about earlier on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you share any resources or communities that have been particularly supportive in your journey?
Well, the University of Washington, because that's where I went to school in Seattle, and that was such a good resource of like people telling me like, okay, you want to be a painter, but here's how it really is. Like, the people are going to be old and white, and they want to buy conceptual work and like landscape. And I'm like, okay, that's like being a sellout. And they're like, yeah, you gotta be a sellout. And that's great to make a living, like great to make a buck. But I don't see that for me as a younger person. I see that for me as like an older person who's like, I need to paint to keep my mind active. So maybe in like my 40s, 50s, I might do more of that type of stuff, like just painting the ocean, which is great. Like there's no like shame to that. But for me, I was like, I want to do something that's like a little spicy, a little weird, a little gimmicky and like strange. And that's where I'm at now. So yeah, I would say just the university and like my teachers and professors and my parents and friends. I would say artists, but they don't fucking know me. Like I would be like, oh, David Lynch, bitch doesn't know me. Like, why would I thank him? But um, yeah, I would say like all the little mentors I've had along the way, and so many people at my work now that are just so I shadowed and I learned all my tools and my materials from. So yeah, all that. And surprisingly supportive of being queer in Florida. I think there's a bad rap around being gay in Florida, but girl, so many of us are. So it's a great little when you find your people here, you found your people.
And what advice would you give to young LGBTQ plus artists who are just starting out?
I would say find the mentor, find the person that's even someone your own age. Like find someone that is in your space online, no matter where you are. Find someone that you can just share your work with, bounce ideas back and forth, keep that journal, keep that Pinterest board, whatever you need to do, your TikTok collection, whatever it is. Um, but to even have one person as community. So like even to find that one person that might be your same age or older and gone through it, to have that mentorship between two people is very, very important. Because you might be seeing one thing one way and they could see the other way, and that goes for the life stuff too. Like you might be like, oh, I don't know how to come out, or I don't know when to come out, and you're overthinking it, or you're you need to take a step back or whatever. Like definitely find a person that can help you grow and learn from.
And connecting it back to the tarot, the King of Swords, like we said, the King is the final card in the suit. So we've achieved something. We're at the end of a cycle, but just because that's over doesn't mean we're done with our goals. It just means that with this door closing, a new one has opened. And being the king has a lot of responsibility. We're all kings of our own castle, and we have to be leaders and use intelligence and logic when we make decisions going forward. And sometimes when people perceive us as a leader or that we've quote unquote made it, they may critique us or challenge us, which also ties into the conflict aspect of this card. But as Jacoby talked about, all that naysay and competition is all external, and we draw our inspiration from within. We need to trust our inner voice and intuition to guide us forward. Remember, this is a very action-oriented card, with swords being a very masculine suit and the king also being a masculine figure. Again, not based in gender or patriarchy, but in terms of being a masculine figure. So both of these masculine energies are just flowing with action and urging us to take inspired action forward. And again, the king is a solid ruler. He thinks things through. He's strategic. He plans. So we can't just rush into the next thing. We really need to focus within to guide us on where we go from here. Well, Jacoby, thank you so much for coming on today and talking all about queer art. I really appreciate it. Can you tell the listeners where they can learn more?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could say I have like a website and like a portfolio. I do not right now. But I would say go on my Instagram at jacoby.nord to just see the updates in my life and where I'm at, and then that's it. And my TikTok, but I don't really post there, so just my Instagram is great.
Awesome. And we'll include all that information in the show notes. And you know the drill. If you have any questions for myself or Jacoby, you can send them to rob@ajadedgay.com. Please also remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 5-star ratings really help the podcast get pushed up in the algorithm so we can reach more LGBTQs out there. Also, for more information on Jacoby, episode resources, links to merchandise, social, all that fun stuff, you can check out the website at ajadedgay.com. You can connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, SoundCloud, and YouTube at A Jaded Gay Pod. You can follow me personally, Rob Loveless, on Instagram at Rob_Loveless. And if you're feeling generous, consider supporting the podcast on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That gets you instant access to ad-free episodes a day early, plus exclusive monthly bonus content. If you sign up at the $3 or $5 tier, you get some added goodies like t-shirts and a personalized shout out from yours truly. Or if you're scared of commitment, that's okay. I get it. You can do a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee for any dollar amount. and both of those are at A Jaded Gay Pod. And remember, every day is all we have, so you got to make your own happiness. Bye! So, how has your journey as a queer artist shaped your creative process and the themes you explore in your work?
Sorry, I zoned out. What'd you say?